5 years ago, if anyone had told Sarah she'd be here, married, expecting a child, wrapped in a life that felt lush and vibrant as a dream, she would have laughed, maybe even cried. Fresh from a painful breakup and with nowhere to go, she'd spent countless nights sleeping on her sister's couch, wondering what her future would hold. She had no home, no clear purpose, and hardly any hope. But today, as she stood before the mirror, fresh from the spa, her biggest concern was finding the perfect sandals to match her breathtaking dress. The dress was like nothing she'd ever owned before. Crafted in luxurious fabric, it flowed and shimmered in tones of peach, blush, and the faintest hint of violet, creating a mesmerizing effect. The colors melded together like a late summer sunset, wrapping her figure in delicate waves. The halter neckline framed her shoulders, held up by fine gold chain straps that sparkled in the light, adding a touch of sophistication. Just below, a small keyhole cutout added a hint of playfulness, making her feel both feminine and effortlessly graceful. She gave a small spin, letting the skirt swirl around her, and admired the way the fabric seemed to dance in soft, airy waves, making her feel almost ethereal. Lost in her reflection, Sarah noticed Mark watching her from the doorway. His gaze was warm, admiring, and brimming with a love that made her heart race. His usual mischievous grin played at the corners of his mouth, though, hinting at ideas that were far from innocent. "Don't even think about it," she teased, arching an eyebrow. "We're not spending another evening locked away. We're going to dinner tonight." Mark chuckled, leaning against the door frame. He was ruggedly handsome, with dark curls brushing his shoulders, giving him a laid-back, effortlessly cool look. She'd once joked that his locks made him look like he'd just stepped off a stage with a forgotten rock band, a look that suited him perfectly. Mark owned his own landscaping and tree-cutting business, Greenview Landscapes. He loved working with his hands, transforming spaces for homes and businesses, which had given him a strong build and a deep tan. Though he spent his days in work clothes and steel-toed boots, tonight he looked incredibly dashing. He wore crisp white pants and a blush orange linen shirt that matched her dress beautifully. She marveled at the serendipity of their outfits. They looked like they'd stepped out of a romantic magazine spread. She made a mental note to sneak away and spritz a little more of her favorite perfume before they left, hoping to cement this moment forever. "Oh, don't worry. I wouldn't dare ruin this one," he replied, nodding toward her dress. His eyes sparkled with humor, though she knew his restraint wasn't all that strong. He'd already ruined more than one of her dresses in moments of passion. Even now, pregnant and with 2 years of marriage behind them, they were as passionately in love as the day they'd met. As she smiled at him, Sarah thought of how unlikely it all was. They'd met through her therapist, Jane, a single mother, eccentric and intuitive. Jane had become her rock during those dark post-breakup days. The type of woman to show up barefoot or in mismatched sneakers, Jane was a whimsical and unfiltered force of energy. As a therapist, she had an uncanny ability to read people and help them find clarity in unconventional ways. Her sessions with Sarah were held over Zoom, which allowed Jane the freedom to work from her cozy home office, decorated with eclectic art and plants that seemed to grow like a small jungle. It was during one of those Zoom sessions that Jane had mentioned her friend, Mark, in passing. "He's not your usual type," Jane had laughed, "but sometimes a change of type is what the soul needs." Mark, who was usually focused on his business and clients, had once asked Jane out. She'd laughed it off, telling him dating wasn't really her thing, and promising she'd introduce him to the right one someday. When Sarah came into Jane's life, she'd kept her promise, nudging both of them, sensing they might be what each other needed. Their first dinner had been awkward and scattered, with no particular depth. Yet, when morning came, she found herself in his bed, not beside him, but while he slept on the couch. Over the weeks that followed, she kept finding reasons to stay over, mostly, she told him, because his bed was irresistibly comfortable. Eventually, staying over turned into moving in. and soon they were inseparable. Sarah's journey had also led her to a new purpose. Shortly after meeting Mark, she landed a job as a paralegal at Westgate Reardon, a local law firm specializing in real estate and business law. Under the guidance of one of the partners, Max Reardon, she grew into an invaluable member of the team. Max saw potential in Sarah early on and took her under his wing, teaching her the intricacies of managing real estate transactions and representing clients in high-stakes business deals. Her precision and dedication made her a standout at the firm, with Max often entrusting her with critical tasks that others at her level wouldn't typically handle. The work gave Sarah not only a steady income, but a sense of pride and confidence she'd never experienced before. She'd become a familiar and trusted face to many clients, who would sometimes request her directly, knowing she brought thoroughness and empathy to every case. She felt grounded, respected, and finally fulfilled in her career, a feeling that had been missing during her aimless days following the breakup. Jane's influence in Sarah's life went well beyond the confines of their therapy sessions. It had taken root and blossomed in ways Sarah never expected. As Sarah settled into her new life with Mark, she would often spot Jane across the street, working on her own property, her presence a constant, whimsical reminder of the bond they shared. Sometimes Jane would be out there, painting small, intricate symbols on the stones lining her driveway, simple, whimsical designs that seemed to carry a hidden meaning. Other days, she'd be adding yet another plant to her already lush garden, each one a unique addition to the patchwork of greens, blossoms, and vines that seemed to have a life of their own under Jane's careful, if eccentric, touch. Sarah often wondered why Jane never crossed the street to greet her directly. Instead, they maintained this quiet, almost ritualistic connection from afar. Jane would give her a warm, knowing wave from across the driveway, a playful grin lighting up her face before she'd disappear back inside her cozy home. Her odd sneakers, often mismatched or splattered with paint, seemed to embody the spirit of her unconventional ways. In those little moments, Sarah felt a deep, unspoken understanding between them, a bond that went beyond ordinary friendship. Jane's presence served as a constant reminder of the world Sarah had built with Mark, a life shaped in part by Jane's influence, her wisdom, and her quirky, almost magical way of interacting with life. The serendipity of it all often amused Sarah, how Jane, the therapist who had once guided her out of heartbreak, lived just across the street. It felt like a quiet blessing, as though fate had placed Jane, a confidant and friend, in exactly the right place. Their friendship was unconventional, built on gestures from afar, and an unspoken understanding that didn't need regular visits or coffee dates to stay strong. One of Jane's most delightful quirks was her habit of sending invoices for the flowers Sarah would gift her. No matter how simple or elaborate the bouquet, Jane would send Sarah a playful invoice afterward, each one more creative than the last. The messages arrived with faux itemized charges, like $85 for the sheer joy of receiving them, or $120 for the vibrant colors that brighten my day. Every bill was a humorous reminder of Jane's playful spirit. Sarah never paid, of course, but the ritual never failed to make her laugh, reinforcing the mischief and affection that marked their friendship. These playful exchanges became cherished symbols of Sarah's journey from heartbreak to happiness. Each time she read Jane's outrageous invoices, she was reminded of her growth and transformation, from a woman lost on her sister's couch to one building a beautiful life with Mark. Every bouquet, every cheeky invoice was a testament to Jane's role in her life, a gentle reminder that growth often blooms from the most unexpected sources. Sarah turned back to the mirror, watching as Mark adjusted his shirt and smoothed down his pants. The soft linen complemented his tanned skin and mirrored the warm tones of her dress perfectly. They looked like they belonged together. She sighed, almost overwhelmed with gratitude and love. "I don't know how I got this lucky," she murmured. Mark moved closer, wrapping his arms around her from behind and resting his chin on her shoulder. "You're not the only lucky one, you know," he whispered. His hand moved gently to rest on her growing belly, and she closed her eyes, feeling the warmth of his embrace and the peace that came with it. Tonight, they would go out, celebrate this life they'd built together, and cherish every moment. And when they returned home, she'd slip out of the dress as carefully as she'd put it on, savoring every second of their togetherness. For now, though, they lingered in each other's arms, soaking in the perfection of this fleeting moment, their reflection a reminder of how far they'd come, and how much more lay ahead.